My name is Violet Elizabeth Carter. I am 35 years old, and I live in New York. Most people get flowers, jewelry, or maybe a nice card for their 35th birthday. My sister Lily gave me a small, neatly wrapped box. We were sitting at a fancy restaurant, surrounded by expensive plates and half-empty wine glasses. For a second, just one foolish second, I actually thought she was trying to be kind. I thought maybe she wanted to fix things between us. I was wrong. I tore off the silver paper and lifted the lid. Inside, there wasn't a watch or a necklace. There was a plastic tube and a sterile swab. It was a home DNA test kit. The table went quiet as I held it up. Then, Lily smirked. She leaned across the white tablecloth, her eyes bright with cruelty. "Maybe this will finally explain why you were always another man's mistake," she said. My mother covered her mouth to hide a giggle. Lily laughed openly, but I felt cold. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I looked at the plastic tube in my hand and I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a bad joke. This was a weapon. She was setting a trap, and I had just walked right into it. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Violet Elizabeth Carter. I am 35 years old. The drive home from the restaurant was silent. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel, not from the cold, but from a mixture of humiliation and a strange, deep anger I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. The small box sat on the passenger seat like a stone. A DNA test. It was supposed to be a joke, Lily said. But Lily didn't tell jokes. Lily told truths wrapped in cruelty so she could watch you bleed while pretending she was holding a bandage. I turned onto the highway, the streetlights blurring into long streaks of yellow. My mind didn't stay on the dinner. Instead, it drifted back, way back, pulling up memories I had tried to pack away in cardboard boxes for years. Lily's words, "another man's mistake," echoed in my head. They hurt, but they didn't surprise me. The truth is, I had felt like a mistake for 35 years. I grew up in a house that was always clean, always quiet, and always cold. We had a large home in the suburbs, with a manicured lawn and a two-car garage. To the neighbors, the Carters were the perfect family. My father, Robert, ran a successful manufacturing business. My mother, Ellen, was the president of the gardening club, and then there were the daughters, Lily and Violet. But inside that house, there was a hierarchy. It wasn't subtle. It was as clear as the furniture arrangement in the living room. Lily was the sun. She was bright, loud, demanding, and beautiful in a way that made people stop and stare. I was the shadow. I was there, occupying space, but I was expected to be unseen, unheard, and unproblematic. I remember my 7th birthday vividly. It is one of those memories that sticks to your ribs like tar. I had asked for a chocolate cake. It was the only thing I really wanted. I loved chocolate, the darker the better. I had spent weeks talking about it. "Mom," I'd say, pulling on her apron strings, "can I have chocolate frosting too?" She would nod, absently, her eyes already scanning a magazine or looking out the window for Lily's school bus. When the day came, there were balloons. There were a few gifts. But when my mother brought the cake out to the dining room table, it was lemon with vanilla frosting. I sat there, staring at the yellow cake, feeling a lump form in my throat. "It's lemon," I whispered. Lily, who was 9 at the time, clapped her hands. "Yum, lemon is my favorite." My mother smiled at her, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes, a smile she rarely gave me. "I know, sweetheart," she said to Lily. Then she looked at me, her expression flattening. "Don't be ungrateful, Violet. Lemon is much lighter. Chocolate is too heavy for a little girl's stomach." I ate the cake. I swallowed every bite of the sour, sweet sponge, and I smiled because that's what I was trained to do. I learned that day that my preferences didn't matter. My birthday wasn't really about me. It was just another day for Lily to get what she wanted. That pattern became the blueprint for my entire life. In high school, the gap between us widened. Lily was wild. She snuck out, she drank, she crashed her car twice. Each time, my parents were frantic. They hired lawyers, they paid off damages, they sat up all night talking to her in hushed, worried tones. They poured all their energy, all their money, and all their love into fixing Lily's messes. I went the other way. I thought if I was perfect, if I caused 0 problems, maybe they would see me. Maybe they would love me for being the good one. I studied until my eyes burned. I kept my room spotless. I never asked for money. I cooked dinner when Mom had a headache. I mowed the lawn when Dad was too tired. I became a ghost in my own house, a useful ghost who did the chores and got straight A's. When I was 18, I was named valedictorian of my graduating class. It was the proudest moment of my life. I had written a speech about resilience, about working hard in silence. I practiced it in front of the bathroom mirror for weeks. On the morning of graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown, feeling a flutter of excitement. My father was drinking coffee, reading the paper. My mother was on the phone, her hand on her forehead. "What's wrong?" I asked. "It's Lily," Mom sighed, hanging up. "She's at her boyfriend's lake house. She called saying she has a migraine, she can't drive home." "But graduation is in 2 hours," I said. My voice sounded small, even to me. "We can't leave her there, Violet," my father said, standing up and grabbing his keys. "She's sick, we have to go get her." "But it's my speech," I said. "I'm valedictorian." My mother looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of annoyance. Not guilt, annoyance. "Violet, please, this is an emergency. We'll try to make it back in time, but family comes first." They left. I drove myself to graduation. I sat on the stage, watching the other students wave to their cheering families in the bleachers. When they called my name, I walked to the podium. I looked out at the sea of faces, searching for my parents. I looked for my father's gray suit, my mother's blue dress. They weren't there. I gave my speech to a room full of strangers. I spoke about resilience, but inside I was crumbling. I accepted my diploma with a polite handshake and walked off the stage. I drove home alone, took off my gown, and hung it in the closet. When they finally came home 3 hours later, Lily was laughing on the couch, eating ice cream. Her migraine was miraculously gone. "Oh, Violet," Mom said, barely looking up. "How was it? Did you get the paper?" "It was fine," I said. "I got it." "Good," Dad grunted. "Lily, pass me the remote." That was the moment I stopped trying to win them over. I realized that love in this house was a limited resource, and Lily had a monopoly on it. I stopped showing them my report cards. I stopped telling them about my promotions at work. I stopped expecting them to care. I moved out the day after I turned 18. I worked 2 jobs to put myself through college. I took out loans. I ate ramen noodles and lived in a tiny apartment with a leaky ceiling. I became tough. I became disciplined. I learned how to file my own taxes, how to change a tire, how to fix a leaking sink. I didn't become independent because I wanted to be a modern, strong woman. I became independent because I had no safety net. I knew that if I fell, no one was coming to catch me. If I needed bail money, or a ride to the hospital, or just a shoulder to cry on, the Carter house was not the place to go. Lily, on the other hand, never left the orbit of my parents' wallet. She borrowed money for business ideas that failed in a month. She moved back home 3 times. She had my father pay her rent, her car insurance, her credit card bills. She called them loans, but everyone knew the money flowed in only one direction. And yet, despite everything, I kept going back. I kept showing up for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for birthdays. I think part of me, the stupid, wounded child part, still hoped that one day they would wake up. One day my father would look at me and say, "I'm proud of you, Violet. You did it all on your own." One day my mother would hug me and say, "I'm sorry we missed your speech." But they never did. Then, 3 months ago, my father died. It was a heart attack. Sudden, quick. At the funeral, I organized the catering. I spoke to the guests. I arranged the flowers. Lily sat in the front row, sobbing dramatically into a lace handkerchief, looking like a tragic movie star. People patted her shoulder. "Poor Lily," they whispered. She was always so close to him. I stood in the back, dry-eyed. I wasn't crying because I was in shock. I was crying inside because I was mourning a relationship I never actually had. I was grieving the father I wanted, not the one I lost. After the funeral, the dynamic in the house shifted. It became sharper, more dangerous. With Dad gone, the buffer was removed. My mother seemed distracted, almost relieved, which unsettled me. And Lily became hungry. I watched her during the wake. She wasn't talking about memories of Dad. She was asking the family lawyer about the timeline for the will reading. She was walking around the house, touching the silver, the paintings, the antique clock, as if she were putting price tags on them. I tried to talk to Mom about it. "She's grieving in her own way," Mom said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "Don't be jealous, Violet, it's ugly." Jealous. That was always the word they used to shut me up. If I complained about unfairness, I was jealous. If I asked for basic respect, I was jealous, so I stayed silent. I went back to my apartment, to my quiet life, and waited. Then came the invitation to the birthday dinner. My 35th, a milestone. "We want to take you out," Lily had texted. "Just the 3 of us girls, a fresh start." I should have known better. A fresh start in Lily's language usually meant, "I need something from you." But I went. I put on my best dress, a simple black sheath that I had bought with my own money. I drove to the restaurant thinking, maybe grief has changed them. Maybe losing Dad made them realize that life is short, and we are all we have left. I sat down at that table with hope. I ordered wine. I listened to them chatter, and then Lily handed me the box. Maybe this will finally explain why you were always another man's mistake. Now, parked in the driveway of my apartment complex, I looked at the box again. The streetlights cast long shadows across the dashboard. I wasn't a Carter. That's what she was saying. That's what the joke was. But as the anger settled into a cold, hard knot in my stomach, I realized something else. Lily wasn't just being mean. Lily was lazy. She didn't do extra work for a simple insult. Buying a DNA test, wrapping it, staging the dinner, this was effort. This was calculated. She wasn't just trying to hurt my feelings. She was trying to tell me something, or show me something. I grabbed the box and got out of the car. The night air was freezing, biting at my exposed arms, but I didn't feel it. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, the plastic tube rattling inside the box with every step. I was the invisible daughter, the one they forgot at graduation, the one who ate lemon cake, the one who fixed her own tires. But tonight, the invisible daughter was starting to see things clearly for the first time. I wasn't just a mistake to them, I was a problem. And looking at the way Lily had smiled, that predatory, knowing smirk, I had a feeling that they were about to try and solve me. 3 months had passed since my father's funeral, and the silence from my family had been deafening. Usually when a parent dies, the surviving family clings to each other. They check in, they share meals. But for 3 months, my phone stayed silent. No texts from Mom asking how I was holding up. No calls from Lily. When the invitation for my birthday dinner finally came, it felt less like a celebration and more like a summons. I arrived at my childhood home before we went to the restaurant. I hadn't planned to, but my mother had asked me to pick her up because her car was in the shop. As I pulled into the long, curved driveway, the house loomed over me. It was a beautiful house, brick, 2 stories with white pillars, but to me it always looked like a fortress. I used my key to let myself in. The air inside was stale, smelling of potpourri and old dust. "Mom," I called out. "In the kitchen." I walked down the hallway, passing the family portraits on the wall. There was Lily, age 5, smiling with a missing tooth. Lily, age 10, holding a trophy. Lily, age 16, in her prom dress. And then, tucked away in the corner, a small 5x7 of me. I looked serious in the photo, my hair pulled back tight, my eyes watchful. Even in the pictures, I looked like I was bracing for impact. I found them in the kitchen. My mother was sitting at the island, flipping through a travel brochure. Lily was leaning against the counter, scrolling on her phone. They looked fine, better than fine. My mother was wearing a bright red blouse, her hair freshly colored. Lily was dressed in a sharp blazer and expensive heels. There was no heaviness in the air, no shadow of grief. My father had been gone 90 days, and they looked like they were planning a spring break vacation. "Hi," I said, standing in the doorway. My mother looked up. "Oh, Violet. You're early." She didn't get up to hug me, she just tapped the brochure. "Lily and I were thinking about Italy in the fall, or maybe a cruise. What do you think?" I blinked. "A cruise. Dad's grave doesn't even have a headstone yet." Lily rolled her eyes, not looking up from her phone. "God, Violet, don't be so morbid. Mom needs to live her life. Dad would want her to be happy." "I know," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It just seems fast." "We grieve differently," Lily said sharply. She finally looked at me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Her eyes were assessing me. It was the way a cat looks at a mouse, not with anger but with anticipation. She was waiting for something. "Are you ready?" Mom asked, closing the brochure. "I'm starving." The drive to the restaurant was awkward. I drove. Mom sat in the passenger seat, complaining about the traffic. Lily sat in the back, texting rapidly. The ping-ping-ping of her phone was the only rhythm in the car. "So," I said, trying to make conversation. "Have you heard from Mr. Henderson?" "About the will." The air in the car instantly changed. It became tight. "Why do you ask?" Mom said, her voice dropping an octave. She stared straight ahead out the windshield. I haven't heard anything," I said. "It's been 3 months. Usually these things happen faster, don't they?" "It's a complex estate, Violet," Lily said from the back seat. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed. "Dad had assets everywhere. It takes time to catalog everything." "Why? Are you desperate for cash?" "No," I said, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "I just want to get it settled. I want closure." "You'll get your closure," Lily said. I glanced in the rearview mirror. She was smiling. A small, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Don't worry about that. We arrived at the restaurant. It was an Italian place, expensive, with dim lighting and waiters in tuxedos. We were led to a corner table. The dinner itself was a blur of superficiality. My mother talked about the neighbors. She talked about her garden. She talked about a new show she was watching. She never asked me about my job. She never asked me about my life. I sat there nodding, eating my pasta, feeling that familiar sensation of being invisible. I was an audience member, not a participant. But Lily kept watching me. Usually, Lily ignored me. She would talk over me or play on her phone. But tonight, she was focused. Every time I looked up, she was studying my face. She was tapping her fingernails on the white tablecloth, a rhythmic click-click-click that started to grate on my nerves. Is something wrong? I finally asked her. No, she said, widening her eyes innocently. Why would something be wrong? It's your birthday. You keep staring at me. I'm just admiring you, Violet, she said. You look so sturdy. You've always been the strong one, haven't you, the survivor? I guess, I said. It's good that you're strong, she said, picking up her wine glass. You're going to need that. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing, she said, taking a sip. Just a compliment, take it. My mother cleared her throat. Lily, give her the present. That was when the box came out. That was when the DNA test landed on the table. That was when she made the joke about another man's mistake. But as I sat there in the restaurant, the humiliation washing over me, my mind started connecting the dots from earlier in the evening. The way they deflected the questions about the will. The way they were planning expensive vacations as if they had just won the lottery. The way Lily was looking at me, not with hate, but with excitement. This DNA test wasn't a prank. A prank is impulsive. A prank is silly. This felt strategic. Lily wasn't just trying to embarrass me. She was trying to disqualify me. If I wasn't a Carter. If I wasn't Robert Carter's biological daughter. What did that mean for the estate? What did that mean for my place in the family? I looked at my mother. She was looking down at her plate, avoiding my eyes. She knew what Lily was doing, and she was letting it happen. Why are you doing this? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I held the box in my hand. Why tonight? I thought you'd want to know the truth, Lily said, shrugging. I mean, look at you, Violet. Look at us, she gestured between herself and me. I'm tall, blonde, just like Dad was. You're you, dark hair, short. You don't even have the Carter nose. That doesn't mean anything, I said. Genes are complicated. Exactly, Lily said. So take the test, prove me wrong, unless you're scared. I'm not scared, I lied. Good, she said. Then do it, send it in. Let's see who you really are. I put the box in my purse. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I finished the dinner in silence. I paid the bill because, of course, they forgot their wallets in the car. When I dropped them off at the big house, I didn't go inside. I watched them walk up the path, arm in arm. They looked like a team, a united front, and I was the enemy they had just engaged in battle. I drove home feeling sick. But beneath the sickness, my brain was waking up. Lily had overplayed her hand. If she had just ignored me, I might have waited for the lawyer to call. I might have stayed passive. But she had poked the bear. She had given me a weapon, thinking I would use it to hurt myself. She gave me the DNA test to prove I didn't belong. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I realized I had to use it. Not to prove I belonged to them, but to find out why they were so desperate to get rid of me. I didn't sleep that night. The plastic-wrapped box sat on my nightstand, mocking me. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on spreadsheets when my entire identity felt like it was hanging by a thread. I needed answers, and I knew I wouldn't get them from Lily or Mom. I needed to go back to the house. I waited until 10 a.m. I knew Lily had a Pilates class at 10:30, and my mother usually went to the grocery store on Tuesdays. I parked my car a block away, just in case, and walked to the house. My key still worked. I slipped inside, the silence of the house pressing against my ears. It felt like trespassing, even though I had lived here for 18 years. I went straight to the study. This was my father's sanctuary. It smelled of tobacco and old paper. I didn't know what I was looking for. A birth certificate, adoption papers, a diary. I rifled through the desk drawers. Nothing but bills, tax returns, and business contracts. I checked the filing cabinets. Everything was impeccably organized, medical records, house deeds, insurance policies. I found my file. Violet. I opened it, my heart hammering against my ribs. It was thin. There was my birth certificate. Father, Robert James Carter. Mother, Ellen Marie Carter. There were my vaccination records, my report cards. But there were no baby pictures in the file. I checked Lily's file. It was bursting. Photos of her first steps, her first bath, her first Christmas, a lock of baby hair taped to a card, a hospital bracelet. My file was just paper. No sentiment, no memories. I closed the drawer, feeling a fresh wave of sadness. I turned to leave the study, but then I stopped. The closet. My father kept a safe in the closet, but I didn't know the combination. However, above the safe, on the high shelf, were stacks of old photo albums and shoeboxes filled with loose pictures. I dragged a chair over and pulled down a dusty shoebox labeled 1988-1990. 1990 was the year I was born. I sat on the floor, cross-legged, and dumped the photos out. Hundreds of snapshots spilled onto the rug. I sifted through them. There was Lily at Disney World, Lily on a pony, Mom and Dad at a gala. I kept digging. Where was I? Finally, near the bottom, I found a Polaroid. It was faded, the corners curling up. It showed a baby me. I knew it was me because of the distinctive birthmark on my left ear, a tiny red crescent. I was wrapped in a generic hospital blanket. But the man holding me wasn't my father. He was tall, with broad shoulders and dark hair that fell over his forehead. He was wearing a gray suit, but his tie was loosened. He was looking down at me with an expression of such intense, heartbreaking tenderness that it took my breath away. He looked like he was holding the most precious thing in the world. My father, Robert, never looked at me like that. Robert looked at me like I was a staff member he couldn't fire. I flipped the photo over. In my mother's handwriting, spidery, shaky blue ink were two words, forgive me. My hands started to tremble. Forgive me. Who was she asking for forgiveness? My father, God, me. I looked at the man in the photo again. He didn't look like a stranger. There was something in the set of his jaw, the shape of his brow, that looked familiar. I got up and walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at my own face, the dark hair, the straight eyebrows, the sharp chin. I looked back at the photo. It was like looking at a male version of myself. I heard the front door open. Panic surged through me. I shoved the photo into my pocket and quickly scrambled to put the shoebox back on the shelf. Hello, it was Lily's voice. She was back early. I froze. I was in the study. There was no other way out. Mom, Lily called out, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, and stepped out into the hallway. Lily stopped dead. She was holding a yoga mat and a green juice. Her eyes narrowed instantly. What are you doing here? She demanded. I left my scarf in the car last night, I lied. I thought Mom might have brought it in. You have a key, she sounded offended. I grew up here, Lily. She walked toward me, sniffing the air. She looked past me into the open door of the study. Were you in Dad's office? I was looking for the scarf. In the office, she laughed, a harsh barking sound. You're snooping. You're looking for the will, aren't you? I'm not, I said, edging toward the door. It won't do you any good, she said, stepping in front of me to block my path. She was taller than me and she used it. She loomed over me. You can look all you want, Violet, but you're not going to find what you're looking for. You're not one of us, you never were. Why do you hate me so much? I asked quietly. I'm your sister. Are you? She stepped closer. Are you really? I felt the Polaroid burning a hole in my pocket. I knew something she didn't know. I had a face now. I had a clue. We'll see, I said. I sidestepped her and walked to the door. Don't forget to spit in the tube. She yelled after me as I walked out onto the porch. We need the results by the end of the month. I got into my car and drove until my hands stopped shaking. I pulled into a parking lot of a grocery store and took the photo out again. Forgive me. My mother had cheated. That was the only explanation. She had an affair, got pregnant with me, and Robert had stayed. But he had punished me for it every single day of my life. I reached into my purse and pulled out the DNA kit. Lily wanted me to take it to prove I was illegitimate. She wanted to shame me. She wanted to use it to cut me out of the inheritance. But now, my motivation had changed. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't care about the Carter name. I wanted to find the man in the photo. I wanted to find the man who looked at me with love. I opened the kit, swabbed my cheek, and sealed the tube. I drove straight to the post office and mailed it. It wasn't a trap anymore. It was a map. And I was going to follow it. The waiting was the hardest part. The box said results would take 4-6 weeks, but I paid extra for expedited processing. I needed to know. For 2 weeks, I went through the motions of my life. I went to work. I bought groceries. I cleaned my apartment. But my mind was constantly churning. I spent hours online, searching for men who looked like the man in the photo. I searched for Ellen Carter Affair 1989. I searched for Robert Carter business rivals. I was grasping at straws. I kept the Polaroid taped to my bathroom mirror. Every morning while I brushed my teeth, I looked at him. "Who are you?" I asked. "Did you know about me? Did you want me?" Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, the email arrived. Subject: Your DNA results are ready. I was at my desk at work. My heart leaped into my throat. I clicked the mouse, my fingers trembling. I logged into the portal. The screen loaded a colorful pie chart. Ethnicity estimate. DNA matches. I clicked on matches. The first thing I saw was the lack of Carters. I had second cousins, third cousins, but no match to the Carter bloodline. Lily was right. Robert was not my father. But then I looked at the top match. Parent/child. Match: Richard Hayes. Shared DNA: 50%. I froze. Richard Hayes. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. It sounded like a business name, something from the news. I opened a new tab and typed Richard Hayes into Google. The search results flooded the screen. Richard Hayes, CEO of Hayes Ventures. Richard Hayes, philanthropist. Richard Hayes, quiet billionaire. I clicked on images, and there he was. He was older now, his hair was silver, his face lined, but it was him. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same man from the Polaroid. My father was a billionaire. I sat back in my chair, the office spinning around me. I wasn't just another man's mistake. I was the daughter of one of the most successful men in the state. But why? How? I started digging deeper. I searched Richard Hayes and Robert Carter. I found an article from the Financial Times archives, dated June 1990. The year I was born. Carter Industries saved from bankruptcy, BY mystery investor. The article detailed how Robert Carter's company was on the brink of collapse due to bad investments. He was about to lose everything. The house, the business, his reputation. And then, at the 11th hour, a private investment firm led by Richard Hayes had injected $5 million into the company. The date of the investment was 2 weeks after I was born. The pieces started to click together, forming a horrifying picture. My mother had an affair with Richard Hayes. She got pregnant. Robert found out. He must have been furious. He must have wanted to leave her to kick her out. But his business was failing. He needed money, so a deal was made. Richard Hayes bailout out Robert Carter. He saved the family fortune. And in exchange, what? He had to stay away. Robert agreed to raise me as his own to avoid a scandal. I felt sick. I wasn't just a mistake. I was a transaction. I was the payment for the Carter family lifestyle. The roof over Lily's head, the cars, the vacations, the private schools, it was all paid for because of me. Because Richard Hayes paid Robert to keep me. And how did Robert repay him? By treating me like garbage, by ignoring me, by making me feel small. I printed everything. The DNA results, the article, the photo of Richard Hayes. I sat in my apartment that night, surrounded by the papers. The shame I had felt at the restaurant was gone. It was replaced by a cold, steely resolve. Lily thought she had uncovered a dirty little secret that would ruin me. She thought that by revealing I wasn't a Carter, she would strip me of my inheritance and my dignity. She had no idea what she had actually done. She had handed me the truth. And the truth was, I wasn't the one who should be ashamed. They were. They had lived off my father's money for 35 years while treating me like an intruder. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Lily. "Did you get the results yet? Or are you too embarrassed to share?" I looked at the text. I didn't reply. I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Lily was planning to ambush me at the will reading. She was preparing to challenge the will, to reveal my parentage to the lawyers and the judge, to claim that since I wasn't a biological Carter, I deserved nothing. She wanted a show. Fine. I would give her one. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for a lawyer, not the family lawyer, but the toughest shark of an estate attorney I could find online. "Hello," I said when the receptionist answered. "My name is Violet. I need representation for a will reading, and I have evidence of a 20-year blackmail scheme." The game had changed. Lily was playing checkers. I was about to play chess. 2 days after I received the DNA results, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was Lily. "Well, now you know, that was it, just 4 words. No, are you okay? No, I'm surprised. No, let's talk." Just a cold, flat confirmation. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. My heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was pounding with a sudden, sharp clarity. If she was texting me this, it meant she wasn't waiting for the results. She didn't need the pie chart or the percentage numbers. She already knew. I drove to my mother's house. I didn't call first. I just went. I needed to see their faces. I needed to understand the timeline of this betrayal. When I walked in, it was late afternoon. My mother was in the sunroom, repotting an orchid. She looked up, startled, wiping soil from her hands. Violet, I didn't know you were coming. Where is she? I asked. My voice was calm, but it felt tight in my throat. Lily, she's upstairs. She's packing for a weekend trip. Mom looked nervous. She kept glancing at the stairs. Is everything okay? No, Mom, everything is not okay. I pulled the folded printout of the DNA results from my purse and set it on the glass table next to the orchid. I know about Richard Hayes. My mother's face went white. It wasn't a gradual pale, the color just drained out of her instantly. She gripped the edge of the table. Violet, Lily knew, I said. Didn't she? My mother looked down at her hands. She was trembling. Yes. How long? A long time, Mom whispered. How long, Mom? Since she was 16. I felt the air leave my lungs. 16. That was 20 years ago. I did the math in my head. Lily was 16 when she crashed her first car. She was 16 when she started demanding a higher allowance. She was 16 when the dynamic in the house shifted from strict to permissive for her, while I remained under the microscope. She found a letter, Mom said, her voice barely audible. I had kept a letter from Richard, just one. I hid it in my jewelry box. Lily was looking for earrings to borrow and she found it. And she blackmailed you, I said. It wasn't a question. Mom nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. She told me she would tell your father. She said she would destroy the family. She said Robert would throw us all out on the street if he knew the truth about you. So you paid her silence, I said. With what money? Freedom? Everything, Mom sobbed. I gave her whatever she wanted. I let her do whatever she wanted. I was so scared. Violet, your father, he was a proud man. If he knew, everyone knew. He would have been humiliated. Dad knew, I said. Mom's head snapped up. What? Dad knew I wasn't his, I said. He made a deal with Richard Hayes. Richard saved the company and Dad agreed to raise me. It was a business transaction. Mom looked confused, then horrified. He never told me he knew. We never spoke of it. Not once in 35 years. So you lived in fear of a secret he already knew, I said. And Lily tortured you for 20 years for nothing. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Slow, deliberate clapping. I turned around. Lily was standing in the doorway, wearing a silk robe, clapping her hands. Bravo, she said. The detective solves the case. She didn't look ashamed. She looked bored. You knew for 20 years, I said, stepping toward her. You let me feel like an alien in my own family. You watched me try so hard to please Dad, knowing it was impossible. You watched me cry over missed birthdays and cold shoulders, and you laughed. It was funny, Lily said, shrugging. Watching you try to be the good daughter, scrubbing floors, getting straight A's, it was pathetic. You were trying to win a game you were disqualified from at birth. You blackmailed Mom, I said. I leveraged an asset, Lily corrected. That's business. Mom had a secret, I had silence. I sold my silence for a comfortable life. Don't be jealous because you didn't think of it first. And the DNA test? I asked. Why now? Why give it to me on my birthday? Lily walked over to the fridge and pulled out a bottle of water. She twisted the cap off, taking her time. Because Dad is dead, she said simply. The blackmail doesn't work on Mom anymore because there's no husband to tell. And I'm tired of sharing, Violet. I've been talking to lawyers. Since you aren't a biological Carter, you have no claim to the estate. The will leaves everything to my children. Technically, you aren't one. So you wanted proof, I said. I wanted you to get the proof, she said, smiling. I wanted you to see it in black and white. I wanted you to understand that you are nothing here. You are a fraud. And when the will is read next week, I want you to sit there and know exactly why you're getting $0. She took a sip of water, looking me up and down. You should be thanking me, she added. I found your real dad. He's rich, right? Maybe you can go cry on his doorstep. Maybe he'll buy you a condo. I looked at my sister. I looked at the cruelty etched into her beautiful face. For years, I had wanted to be like her. I had wanted her confidence, her shine. Now I just saw a hollow, broken thing. She had spent her entire life manipulating the people who were supposed to love her. She didn't know what love was. She only knew leverage. You're right, I said quietly. Lily blinked. Excuse me. You're right, I repeated. I am going to the will reading, and I am going to bring the results. Good, Lily said, though she looked slightly suspicious of my calmness. Save us all the time of a court battle. Just sign the waiver and walk away. We'll see, I said. I turned to my mother. She was still sitting at the table, crying into her hands. She looked small and weak. She had chosen her reputation over her daughter. She had let Lily run this house like a tyrant because she was too cowardly to face her own mistake. I'm leaving, Mom, I said. Violet, please, she whispered. Don't go. I have to, I said. I have a meeting with a lawyer. I walked out of the house. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The secret was out. The poison that had been festering in our family for decades had finally been drained. Lily thought she had won. She thought she had fired the final shot. She thought the DNA test was the end of my story. She was wrong. It was just the beginning. I got into my car and dialed the number of the attorney I had found. His name was Mr. Sterling. He had a reputation for being ruthless. "Mr. Sterling," I said when he answered, "it's Violet. I have the confirmation. And I have a witness to the blackmail." "Excellent," his gravelly voice came through the speaker. "Bring everything. The will reading is on Friday." "Yes," I said. "Get some sleep, Violet," he said. "Friday is going to be a very interesting day." I hung up and looked back at the house one last time. I saw Lily's silhouette in the window, watching me. I didn't wave. I just put the car in gear and drove away. She had no idea what was coming. The law office of Henderson and Associates was located in a tall glass building downtown. It smelled of leather polish and expensive cologne. I arrived 15 minutes early. Mr. Sterling, my attorney, was already there. He was a short man with sharp eyes and a suit that cost more than my car. He didn't smile much, which I liked. "Are you ready?" he asked, shaking my hand. "I am," I said. I was wearing my best suit, a navy blue blazer and tailored trousers. I didn't dress to look rich, I dressed to look serious. We walked into the conference room. It was dominated by a massive mahogany table. 5 minutes later, the door opened, and Lily walked in. She made an entrance. She was wearing a black dress that looked appropriate for morning, but was cut low enough to be provocative. She had a wide-brimmed hat and dark sunglasses, which she removed slowly as she sat down. My mother trailed in behind her, looking pale and nervous. She sat between us, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Lily looked at Mr. Sterling, then at me. She smirked. "Lawyer up, really, Violet. It's a standard reading. You're just wasting money." "We'll see," Mr. Sterling said calmly. He opened his briefcase and laid a notepad on the table. Mr. Henderson, my father's longtime attorney, cleared his throat. He was an elderly man with shaking hands. He sat at the head of the table, a thick document in front of him. "Thank you all for coming," Mr. Henderson said. "This has been a difficult time for the Carter family. Robert was a good man." Lily sighed loudly. "Can we skip the eulogy, please? We all know he was great. Let's get to the assets." Mr. Henderson frowned over his spectacles but nodded. "Very well, I will proceed to the distribution of assets." He began reading. It was standard legal language at first. Debts to be paid, funeral expenses covered, then came the specific bequests. "To my wife, Ellen Marie Carter," Mr. Henderson read, "I leave the marital home and a monthly stipend of $5,000 to be drawn from the estate trust, provided she does not remarry." Lily frowned. "A stipend. Why doesn't she get the lump sum?" "Robert was concerned about money management," Mr. Henderson said diplomatically. Lily drummed her fingers on the table. "Fine, whatever. Keep going. To my daughter, Lily Ann Carter." Lily sat up straighter. She shot a glance at me, a look of pure triumph. "I leave the sum of $50,000. The room went silent. Lily blinked. She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "I'm sorry, you missed a zero. You mean 500,000 or 5 million. $50,000, Mr. Henderson repeated. He didn't look up. "That's impossible," Lily snapped. That's nothing. That wouldn't even cover my credit card bill for the year." "Let him finish," Mr. Sterling said softly. Lily glared at him but shut her mouth. Her face was turning red. "And finally," Mr. Henderson said, turning the page, "to Violet Elizabeth Carter." Lily slammed her hand on the table. "She's not a Carter. I have proof. I have a DNA test right here." She reached into her purse and pulled out the results I had sent her, or rather, the copy she had made. "She is a bastard. She isn't his daughter. The will says my children. She isn't his child." Mr. Henderson looked at Lily with an expression of profound pity. He waited for her to stop shouting. "If you would let me finish, Lily," he said sternly. He looked down at the document. "To Violet Elizabeth Carter, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the majority ownership of Carter Industries, the investment portfolio, and all liquid assets. This amounts to approximately 70% of the total estate value." Lily's mouth fell open. My mother gasped. I sat perfectly still. I felt Mr. Sterling tap my foot under the table, a signal to remain calm. "This is a mistake," Lily whispered. "He didn't know. He must not have known. If he knew she wasn't his." Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. "There is a personal addendum attached to this section. Robert insisted it be included. He looked directly at me. It reads, I have known since Violet was 2 years old that she is not my biological child. I accepted the arrangement to save my company, but over the years, I observed something I did not expect. I watched a young woman grow up in my house with no encouragement, no help, and no love from the people who should have given it. I watched her work harder than anyone I have ever known. I watched her build a life with honor and integrity, while my biological daughter grew into a woman who understands only greed and manipulation. Violet, I was not a good father to you. I was cold. I was distant. I was ashamed of how you came to be. But in the end, blood does not make a successor. Character does. I choose you anyway. The silence in the room was heavy. It pressed against my ears. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not tears of joy, but tears of release. He had seen me. All those years when I thought I was invisible, he had been watching. He hadn't been kind, he admitted that, but he had been just. Lily stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. No, she screamed. This is insane. He was senile. He was crazy. I'm his daughter. I'm the real one. Sit down, Miss Carter, Mr. Henderson said sharply. I will not sit down, Lily shouted. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You witch, you manipulated him. You must have tricked him. I didn't do anything, Lily, I said calmly. I just lived my life. I'm contesting this, Lily hissed. I'm going to sue. I'm going to drag this through court for years. You won't see a dime. I will prove he was mentally incompetent. I will prove you are a fraud. She looked at our mother. Mom, tell them he was sick. Mom looked at the floor, weeping silently. Lily, Mr. Henderson said. His voice was very quiet now, very dangerous. Before you threaten legal action, you need to hear the rest of the will. I don't care about the rest. You should, Mr. Henderson said, because there is a section regarding the no contest clause. And there is also a folder of evidence that Robert asked me to present to you if you decided to cause a scene. Evidence? Lily faltered. Mr. Henderson reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick black folder. He slid it across the mahogany table. It stopped right in front of Lily. What is this? She asked. Open it, I said. Lily opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the first page. Her face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. She flipped the page, then another, then another. Her hands started to shake uncontrollably. She dropped the folder as if it were burning her skin. He knew, she whispered. Yes, Mr. Henderson said. He knew everything. Lily sank back into her chair, looking like a marionette whose strings had been cut. The arrogance was gone. The fury was gone. All that was left was fear. I looked at the folder. I didn't need to read it to know what was in it. But I knew that whatever was in those pages was the final nail in the coffin of Lily's life as she knew it. The twist wasn't that I got the money. The twist was that the man we all thought was oblivious, the man we thought was just a distant, check-writing father, had been the only one paying attention. He hadn't just left me the money. He had left me the victory. Lily stared at the black folder on the table. She looked like she wanted to vomit. What is it? Mom asked, her voice trembling. Lily, what's in there? Lily didn't answer. She couldn't. She was paralyzed. Mr. Henderson reached out and tapped the folder with his index finger. Since Miss Carter seems unable to speak, allow me to summarize the contents. 2 years ago, shortly after his first heart scare, Robert hired a private investigator. Why? Mom asked. He suspected that money was leaking from his accounts, Mr. Henderson said. He initially thought it might be an accounting error, or perhaps, Violet. He looked at me apologetically. But the investigator quickly ruled Violet out. Violet's finances were completely independent. She never took a dime. Mr. Henderson opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photos and transcripts. The investigator turned his attention to you, Lily. He laid a photo on the table. It showed Lily sitting at a cafe with a man in a suit. This is you meeting with an estate attorney 18 months ago, Mr. Henderson said. The transcript of your conversation is quite enlightening. You were asking about how to circumvent a will. You were asking how to have a parent declared mentally incompetent so you could take power of attorney. Lily made a choking sound. And this, Mr. Henderson continued, pulling out a bank statement, is a record of the loans you took. Unauthorized withdrawals from your mother's joint account. $50,000 over the last 2 years alone. Mom gasped. Lily, you said you needed that for the business. There was no business, Ellen, Mr. Henderson said gently. The investigator found that the money went to high-end clothing stores, vacations, and gambling debts. Gambling? I asked, surprised. Online poker, Mr. Henderson said. She's not very good at it. He turned back to Lily. But the most damning piece of evidence is this. He pulled out a digital recorder. He pressed play. The audio was crackly, but the voice was unmistakable. It was Lily talking on the phone. "I don't care if he dies, Sarah. I just need him to hurry up. I have debts to pay. Once the old man kicks the bucket, I'm cashing out the house. I'm putting Mom in a home, the cheapest one I can find, and I'm taking everything. Violet won't get a thing. I have a plan for her." The recording clicked off. The silence in the room was absolute. My mother was staring at Lily with horror. For the first time, she wasn't looking at her golden child. She was looking at a monster. "You were going to put me in a home," Mom whispered. "After everything I did for you. After I let you. After I kept your secret." Lily stammered. "I was just venting. I didn't mean it." "Robert heard this recording 3 months before he died," Mr. Henderson said. "It broke his heart. But it also gave him clarity." He closed the folder. "Now, about that contest you threatened," Mr. Henderson said, his voice hardening. "The will contains a strict no-contest clause. It states that if any beneficiary challenges the validity of this will, they automatically forfeit their entire inheritance." Lily's eyes widened. "But I only get 50,000. "If you contest," Mr. Sterling interjected, speaking up for the first time, "you get 0. And given the evidence of fraud and elder abuse in this folder, specifically the unauthorized withdrawals, the estate would be within its rights to press criminal charges." Lily froze. "Criminal charges? Theft, fraud, extortion." Mr. Sterling listed them off on his fingers. "Mr. Henderson tells me you owe the estate roughly $200,000 in loans you never paid back. If you accept the will, the debt is forgiven up to the amount of your inheritance. If you fight, well, Violet effectively owns the debt, and she can call it in." Lily looked at me. Her eyes were wild, desperate. She looked for a trace of the sister she used to bully. She looked for the weak, eager-to-please Violet who just wanted a hug. She didn't find her. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the mahogany table. I looked her right in the eye. "You tried to erase me, Lily," I said softly. "You tried to prove I didn't belong. You tried to steal my history, but all you did was show Dad who you really were." "Violet, please," Lily whispered. Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining her makeup. "I'm your sister. We're family." "Are we?" I asked. "You told me at the restaurant that I wasn't a Carter. You told me I was a mistake." I was angry. "I didn't mean it. You meant every word," I said. "And you meant to put Mom in a home, and you meant to steal everything." I looked at Mr. Henderson. "Does she have to sign something to accept the 50,000? "Yes," Mr. Henderson said. "She needs to sign the waiver of contest." "Give it to her," I said. Mr. Henderson slid a single sheet of paper across the table. Lily looked at it. $50,000. It was a lot of money to some people, but to Lily, who had debts and a lifestyle she couldn't support, it was a death sentence. It was poverty. "If I sign this," she said, her voice shaking, "I get the check. Today, within 30 days, Mr. Henderson said. "And if I don't?" "Then we file the police report regarding the theft of funds from your mother's account tomorrow morning," I said. Lily flinched. She looked at Mom. "Mom, help me?" Mom turned her head away. She looked out the window at the city skyline. "I think you should sign, Lily." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard my mother say no to her. Lily let out a sob. She grabbed the pen. Her hand was shaking so hard she could barely write. She scratched her signature onto the line. She threw the pen down. "There, are you happy?" "No," I said honestly. "I'm not happy. This is a tragedy, but it's done." Lily stood up. She grabbed her purse. She looked at me with pure venom. "You think you won, but you're still all alone, Violet. You have money now, but you have nobody." She stormed out of the room, slamming the heavy door behind her. I sat there in the silence, listening to the hum of the air conditioning. I wasn't alone. I had myself. And for the first time in 35 years, that felt like enough. The room felt lighter after Lily left. The air seemed easier to breathe. My mother was still sitting there, staring at the empty chair where Lily had been. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Mr. Henderson gathered his papers. "Violet, there are some documents for you to sign regarding the transfer of assets, and Mr. Sterling has some additional papers." "Thank you," I said. I signed the papers. I felt the weight of the responsibility. 70% of the estate. The company, the house. It was overwhelming, but I felt ready. I had been managing my own life on a shoestring budget for years. Managing abundance would be a different challenge, but I wasn't afraid of work. When the lawyers were done, they stepped out to give us a moment. It was just me and Mom. She turned to me slowly. Her eyes were red and swollen. "Violet," she said, her voice was weak. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I said. I'm so sorry, she wept. I was so scared, I let her hurt you. I let your father ignore you. I was trying to protect the family. You weren't protecting the family, Mom, I said gently. You were protecting yourself, you were protecting your secret. I know, she sobbed. I know, can you forgive me? I looked at her. This woman who had given birth to me, but who had never really been a mother to me. She had fed me and clothed me, but she had starved me of affection. She had let my sister torment me. She had let my father treat me like an employee. Could I forgive her? Forgiveness is a tricky word. People think it means going back to the way things were. They think it means saying, it's okay. But it wasn't okay, and we couldn't go back. I can forgive you, I said slowly, but I can't forget, and I can't trust you. What does that mean? She asked, looking frightened. It means things are going to be different now, I said. I own the house, Mom. She nodded nervously. Yes. The will says, you can stay there, I said. I'm not going to kick you out. I'm not Lily. I'm not going to put you in a cheap home. She let out a breath of relief. Oh, thank you, Violet, thank you. But, I raised a hand. There are rules. Lily is not allowed to live there. She is not allowed to come over and harass you for money. If she does, you call me and I call the police. If you give her money from your stipend, money that is meant for you, I will find out. And if you do, I will cut the stipend off. Mom's eyes widened. Violet, that's harsh. It's necessary, I said. You have an addiction, Mom. Your addiction is Lily. You can't say no to her, so I am saying no for you. I am setting the boundary because you can't. She's my daughter, Mom whispered. So am I said, but you never fought for me. Now I'm fighting for myself. And in a way, I'm fighting for you too. Lily drains you, she hurts you. I'm stopping it. Okay, Mom said, dropping her head. Okay, I understand. I'm going to pay off the mortgage on the house, I continued. I'm going to make sure the bills are paid. You will be safe, you will be comfortable. But we are not going to pretend to be best friends. I'm not coming over for Sunday dinner to pretend we're a happy family. I need space. I need time. I understand, she said again. I'm going to sell my apartment, I said. I'm going to buy a place of my own, somewhere far enough away that I don't have to drive past Dad's grave every day. Violet, Mom reached out across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled my hand back. Not angrily, just firmly. No, Mom, I said. Not yet. I stood up. I picked up my purse. I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't expected. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't raged. I hadn't destroyed Lily's life out of spite. She had destroyed it herself. I had simply established the law of the land. I'll have the lawyers send you the schedule for the stipend, I said. Take care of yourself, Mom. I walked out of the conference room. As I walked down the hallway, I passed Lily. She was sitting on a bench near the elevators, talking frantically on her phone. She looked up as I passed. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy. She covered the phone. Violet, wait. I didn't stop. I pressed the elevator button. Violet, I need more than 50, she pleaded, standing up. I owe people money, dangerous people. You can't leave me like this. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. You're smart, Lily, I said, holding the door open for a brief second. You've always been the smart one. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I let the doors close. Her screaming face disappeared. As the elevator descended, I leaned my head against the cool metal wall. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. But underneath the exhaustion, there was peace. It was over. The war was over. A week later, I had one more meeting. This one wasn't in a corporate office. It was at a small, private firm in the wealthy part of the city. The sign on the door said Halloway & Sons. I was there to see the executor of Richard Hayes' estate. I hadn't contacted Richard. I didn't want to disrupt his life. But after the news of my inheritance from Robert hit the legal circles, I received a letter. It was from Richard's lawyer. It said that Richard had passed away 2 years ago. I had missed him. I had found my father, only to find out he was already gone. I sat in the office, waiting. An older woman walked in. She had kind eyes. Violet, she asked. I'm Mrs. Halloway. Richard asked me to wait for you. Wait for me, I asked. He knew that one day you might find out, she said. Or he hoped you would. He followed your life, you know. From a distance. She placed a wooden box on the desk. He set up a trust for you, she said. Separate from his main estate. He didn't want his other family to know, not because he was ashamed of you, but because he wanted to protect you from the spotlight. He wanted you to have something that was just yours. She opened the box. Inside, there was a stack of documents, a leather-bound journal, and a heavy silver watch. The trust is substantial, Mrs. Halloway said. Enough to ensure you never have to work again if you don't want to, but Richard cared more about this. She handed me the journal. I opened it. It was handwritten. My dearest Violet, if you're reading this, it means you finally know. I am sorry I was not there. I am sorry I could not hold you when you cried, or cheer for you when you graduated. I made a promise to Robert to stay away, and I kept it, because I thought it was the best way to keep you safe and housed. But I watched. I hired people to update me. I have a scrapbook of your achievements. I know you were valedictorian. I know you work in finance. I know you are kind and strong and resilient. You were never a mistake to me. You were the one thing I got right, even if I couldn't claim you. Don't let the world make you hard, Violet. You have a gentle heart, protect it. Love, Richard. I sat in that chair and cried. I cried for the father I never knew. I cried for the father who raised me but couldn't love me. I cried for the years I spent thinking I was broken. He wore this every day, Mrs. Halloway said, handing me the watch. He wanted you to have it. I fastened the watch around my wrist. It was heavy, grounding. It felt like an anchor. 6 months later, I drove down a winding dirt road, the gravel crunching under my tires. The trees were turning orange and gold. I pulled up to the cottage. It was small, with a wraparound porch and a view of the mountains. It was mine. I didn't quit my job, I liked my work, but I reduced my hours. I used the money from Robert's estate and Richard's trust to start a foundation. We provided scholarships for kids who had been in the foster system, kids who had been overlooked, kids who felt invisible. I got out of the car. The air was crisp and clean. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom, thinking of you. The garden is beautiful today. I smiled. It was short, it was simple, it was enough. We texted once a week. I hadn't seen her in person since the reading, but we were slowly, carefully building something new. Something based on boundaries, not obligation. As for Lily, I heard she moved to another state. She was working as a receptionist. She was paying off her debts. I didn't wish her harm, I just didn't think about her at all. I walked up the steps to my porch and sat in the rocking chair. I looked down at the silver watch on my wrist. It was ticking steadily. Tick, tick, tick. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind in the trees. For 35 years, I had been the invisible daughter. I had been the mistake. I had been the shadow. But sitting there, in the quiet of my own home, paid for by my own resilience and the legacy of 2 complicated fathers, I finally knew the truth. I wasn't invisible, I was just waiting for the right light. And now, finally, the sun was shining on me.